You brought from inside the house?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I went and got. This is a long story. My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats. Most of it's been benign stuff we didn't take serious.
Okay.
You know, he's been getting like punched. I know that's what it is.
Alex Murdaugh's murder trials. A family that had long dominated the legal scene in a small county in South Carolina had been standing across the courtroom for many weeks, on trial for murder. Alex Murdaugh stood trial for the murder of his wife and son before being finally convicted on March 2 and sentenced to life imprisonment the next morning. In connection with this case, more than 75 witnesses were summoned to court, and about 800 pieces of evidence were presented. Was he the real culprit? Or were charges against him forced? Well, you have to watch this video till the end to find out the details of this case. Let's begin. How did the killings happen? Alex Murdaugh called 911 on the evening of June 7, 2021, and said he found his son and wife died when he returned home from a one-hour visit to his mother with dementia. Maggie Murdaugh, 52, and her 22-year-old son, Paul Murdaugh, were found dead on the 1,770-acre property where the family has a hunting lodge. Authorities said Paul Murdaugh was shot twice with a shotgun, loaded with shots of varying sizes each round, while Maggie Murdaugh was hit with 4 or 5 bullets from a rifle. A crime scene report suggested that both victims were first wounded near dog kennels on the Murdaugh's sprawling rural estate, and then shot in the head by the murderer. It took prosecutors more than a year to charge Alex Murdaugh with murder but decided against the death penalty. He strongly denied any involvement in the murders, as well as in his other crimes. Randolph Murdaugh death. Right 3 days after Maggie and Paul's deaths, tragedy struck the family again, when the family patriarch, well-known local prosecutor Randolph Murdaugh III, died on 10th June 2021. He was 81 years old and died after a long prevailing illness. Paul Murdaugh's awaited trial. According to police, Paul Murdaugh was awaiting trial in connection with a boat accident in 2019 that killed a 19-year-old woman. In April of the same year, Paul was arrested and later charged with driving under the influence of boats in one case, resulting in death, and 2 counts of grievous bodily harm. After attending a gathering on Paris Island in February, Paul, who had allegedly been drinking, sat behind the wheel of a 5-passenger boat that crashed into a bridge pier around 2 a.m. 19-year-old Mallory Beach was thrown out of the boat, and the body was found a week later. In May 2019, Paul pleaded not guilty. He was released on $50,000 bail. No trial date has been set. Days after the murders, Alex's brothers showed up on Good Morning America and insinuated that Paul was threatened online before his murder, insisting that Alex was not involved in the killing of his wife and young son. Death of housekeeper Gloria Satterfield. Amid Alex's ongoing legal problems, a new twist came into the case. On September 15, 2021, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division announced that it was launching an investigation into the death in 2018 of Murdaugh's housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, who died after an alleged tripping and falling accident at the family's home in Hampton, South Carolina, which they have since sold. The officials stated that a coroner had found inconsistencies in connection with Satterfield's death. These strange connections were not reported to the coroner in 2018. Moreover, no autopsy was performed and details of the alleged fall at Satterfield were also not disclosed. On September 15, 2021, Satterfield's sons filed a civil lawsuit against Alex Murdaugh and others, claiming they had never received insurance payment due to their mother's death. In the lawsuit, Satterfield's sons claimed that Alex approached them after their mother's death. They claim Alex told them to sue him. According to the lawsuit, Alex personally introduced the sons to attorney Corey Fleming and recommended that he represent them in the case. Alex did not reveal at the time that Fleming was his college roommate and the godfather of one of his sons. According to the complaint, Alex's insurance company agreed to a partial settlement of claims related to Gloria Satterfield's death for $505,000 to her sons. But the Housekeeper sons never received their money. They hired new lawyers. As the civil lawsuit continues, police announced they would investigate Satterfield's death for any criminal liability. In June 2022, it was announced that investigators would exhume Satterfield's body, and the family agreed. Other charges against Alex. In a separate case that has yet to go to court, Alex Murdaugh was charged with alleged $8.8 million in victim fraud and approximately $490,000 of the state, on 99 counts in 6 different counts. Other charges against Alex consist of 32 counts of embezzlement, 21 counts of computer crime, and 11 counts of obtaining signatures or property by pretenses. Moreover, he has charges of 14 counts of money laundering, 9 counts of tax evasion, 7 counts of conspiracy, 2 counts of forgery, and 3 counts of false testimony or misrepresentation. The allegations include brazen plans to defraud his clients and partners in his eponymous law firm. Taking just one example, Alex is accused by a client of stealing at least $1 million. His client Hakeem Pinkney was seriously injured when a tire tread came loose from the car he was driving, causing the car to tip over. Pinkney's family hired Murdaugh to sue the tire company, but afterward, Murdaugh kept the profit they won. Alex Murdaugh admitted to stealing clients' money during his testimony in his murder trial. Murdaugh is also charged with conspiracy, false payment, and filing a false police report in the allegedly botched suicide bombing on September 4, 2021. In the bizarre incident, Murdaugh was shot in the head on the side of the road the day after he had to give up his law firm. He first told the police that an unknown man shot him. However, he later changed his statement and admitted that he conspired with a former client to kill him. It was part of their fraud program so that his only surviving son could collect his $12 million life insurance. Alex Murdaugh is now awaiting trial for all these financial crimes he has admitted. Revelations in Alex's trail. The trial of Alex Murdaugh began 17 months after the murder of Maggie and Paul. On January 23, 2023, a law enforcement source close to the investigation revealed that Alex contacted Maggie on the night of the murders and asked her to meet him at the family's 1,770-acre estate. According to the source, Alex told Maggie that his 81-year-old father was in poor health and that she needed to see him before he died. According to multiple sources, Maggie and Alex had gone through a difficult period in their marriage. She lived in the family's beach house on the island of Edisto, about an hour from the family's estate. The law enforcement source revealed that Maggie initially refused to meet Alex at the family's home, suggesting that they meet at the hospital instead. Eventually, she agreed to meet on the property and planned to follow Alex to the hospital in her own vehicle. On the way to the house, Maggie allegedly sent a message to a friend saying that something about her husband's behavior felt lazy. Not long after, Maggie and Paul were killed. Paul's texts to Maggie not the night of the murder were also presented in court. According to court testimony, Alex wrote Maggie a text message to call him at 9:47 p.m. after Maggie and Paul have already been killed. Bomb threat during trial. In the early afternoon of 8 February 2023, Judge Clifton Newman addressed his Colleton County courtroom saying that they all have to evacuate the building at that time, and they'll be in recess until they discover what was going on. Officials later confirmed that the courthouse had received a bomb threat which interrupted the trial. This was something quite strange. Prosecution's case details. Prosecutors who claim Alex Murdaugh killed his wife and son to distract from his financial crimes did not present direct evidence against him. They called 61 witnesses and introduced more than 550 pieces of evidence over 17 days, including descriptions of the brutality of the killings and narcotic details of bank records. The weapons used to kill the victims were not manufactured. But prosecutors got an important piece of evidence showing that Murdaugh had lied to police, and that took him to the kennel where his wife and son were shot just 5 minutes before investigators believed they were killed for no longer using their cell phones. It's a video of Paul Murdaugh locked in his cell phone for a year after the murders until federal agents were able to hack it. Alex Murdaugh told the first police officer who arrived and all investigators afterward that he had never been to the kennels. But his voice is on this video.
He's got birds in his mouth.
Come here, Bubba.
Come here, Cash. Come here, Bubba. Yeah.
According to prosecutor Creighton Waters, that changed everything. He said so in his final statement on Wednesday, March 1. Murdaugh admitted to lying when he stood in his own defense and accused law enforcement of paranoia because he was addicted to opiates and had a bottle of pills in his pocket when he was questioned. Waters asked jurors why an innocent man who had just seen his wife and son slaughtered or the investigation of state agents would worry about pills. Waters insisted that he was lying to everyone just as he lied to his closest friends. Murdaugh was the 72nd witness to be summoned during the trial. His defense team wasted no time. Her first questions were whether he had killed his wife or son, which he repeatedly denied. During questioning by his lawyer and prosecutors, he repeatedly denied ever hurting them. Details of defense case. The defense called experts who said investigators had not dusted for fingerprints, collected and tested blood, or photographed evidence with the angles or clarity needed to study it properly later. The first officer arrived at Colleton County 20 minutes after Murdaugh called 911. Almost immediately, the local sheriff handed the investigation over to the State Law Enforcement Division. It took hours for agents from across the state to penetrate deep into the lowlands of South Carolina. During this time, more than a dozen family members and friends walked around the scene, comforting Murdaugh. The bodies of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were covered with a sheet that can absorb liquid instead of a tarpaulin. Then the sheet was not saved, which means that possibly the hair or DNA of a murderer could have been lost. It rained intermittently, and the drain from the kennel roof fell on Paul Murdaugh's covered body. As soon as the state agents arrived at the scene, they allowed Murdaugh and his associates to the house. Witnesses testified that it had not been searched for weapons, bloody clothing, and other evidence, or even checked to see if a suspect was hidden inside. The defense also called in an expert who testified that the murders likely required two shooters because both Paul and Maggie Murdaugh had apparently been taken by surprise. Her hands were not raised in defense, and the shockwave, blood after Paul Murdaugh was shot in the head with a shotgun at close range would likely have stunned the shooter for at least a few seconds, and Maggie Murdaugh would have reacted. Alex Murdaugh was charged with both murders, which has tied prosecutors to him as the only shooter. Defense attorney Jim Griffin said in the closing statement that state agents put Murdaugh at the center of a suspect circle and did nothing to get him out. Judgment. The jury visited the scene one day before the prosecution and defense held closing arguments for parts of 2 days. When the final arguments concluded on Thursday, March 2, the judge handed Murdaugh's fate over to the jurors, who took less than 3 hours to deliver their verdict. Alex Murdaugh, 54, could have received just 30 years behind bars for each murder, but the judge on Friday, March 3, sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. After the verdict was read, the defense requested that a mistrial be declared and the result dismissed, but Judge Clifton Newman denied the request, commenting on the enormous amount of evidence and testimony the jury had heard. He said the jury had now reviewed the evidence over a considerable time, and the evidence of guilt was overwhelming. Murdaugh's lawyers decided to appeal the conviction because the judge allowed evidence of the financial crimes that they believed were unrelated to the murders and were used by prosecutors to tarnish Murdaugh's reputation. A week after Alex Murdaugh was convicted of murdering his wife and son, his lawyers announced they would appeal both the conviction and his prison sentences. So, these were all the twists and turns of Alex Murdaugh's murder trial. If you found this case story compelling, don't forget to like the video and comment below with your take on it. Subscribe to the channel for more similar videos and hit the bell icon to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.